What is up guys, Mr. Paradise is here. Guys, I hope you all doing well. Please be careful and stay safe out of this coronavirus. Today guys, we are going to go through the geography lesson which will be about Russia. Without further ado, let's get started. While talking about Russia, it's important to highlight 4 factors that actually will help us to build a big picture of it. Factor number 1, Russia is a big and important country. In fact, it's actually the world's biggest one in area. Number 2, it lies partly in Europe, but mostly in Asia. Number 3, it extends into the Arctic, so has very cold winters and cool summers overall, even in comparison with our country, guys. You can even notice that we ain't having that much snow that actually Russia does. And of course, Russia is very rich in natural resources. What I want you to do is to stop this video for just 1 minute and brainstorm the ideas that come to you when you hear about Russia. I really hope that this is not the material that is irrelevant to our lesson. So please, just reminder, all the lesson included facts you can state in the comments below. Thank you. Right, after you answered the question, let's actually start the unit about Russia. So, let's see, where is it? Russia is actually a big and powerful country. It spreads across the top half of Asia and into the Europe, as you see on the map. Its coastline borders 2 oceans, and it's only 82 kilometers from Alaska in the United States, across the strip of sea, which is called the Bering Strait. Let's actually zoom it. So you see that small Russian exclave next to Lithuania. It's actually called Kaliningrad. And in this map right now you see the pale pink colors. Actually, in reality, it is Russia. For much of the 20th century, Russia and these countries formed the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, or, as it was called, the Soviet Union. It was controlled from Moscow, Russia's capital, but broke up in 1991. Now again, time to stop this video and try to find the location which is called Crimea. I hope you do it. So, as you found that location, I hope you did, we are going to talk about the reality of that location. So, under the international law, it's a part of Ukraine, but it's run by Russia, you know. In 2014, the residents supported by Russia voted for it to become part of Russia. This vote was condemned as illegal by the governments of Ukraine and other countries, including the UK. So in fact, they actually wanted to state as if this was their territory. However, Ukraine and other countries, and also the UK, rejected that. They said, no, it's not right. It's illegal. Right, now let's talk about Russian details. Basically what it's like. Russia itself is a fascinating country. Let's talk about its overview. Related to the size. Vast 17.1 million square, that's about 70 times bigger than UK. And let's imagine how bigger it is than our country itself. Wow, I'm actually even afraid to imagine it. Next, related to the time zones, Russia itself is so wide that it has 11 time zones. At midday, in Kaliningrad, it's 10 p.m. Alright, what about population? 146 million of people. Only about 2 and 3 times more than in the UK. You know, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages of big countries and of their big areas. One of them that it has empty places. So Russia itself actually has huge areas of absolutely empty. Have you ever seen the polar bear? In fact, in those places like the Arctics, we can see those bears, and they actually got used to that climate. Imagine yourself there for 1 second. I probably will die there because I can't stand the cold weather, for real. Now let's talk about its landscapes. Oh my god, frozen tundra, vast forests, grassy plains, sunny beaches, mountains, volcanoes, and long rivers. Russia basically has it all. Now, again, challenge for you guys. Stop this video and please note in the comments which is one of the longest rivers in Russia. Come on. Right, after you complete the challenge, let's actually go to the natural wealth of Russia. Russia itself is rich in natural resources. And now, guys, the question is, do you remember what is renewable and non-renewable resources? I hope you do. Alright, those resources like oil, gas, coal, timber, metals, and diamonds, and actually, these all in all are in Russia. Of course, not only in Russia. And it depends heavily on exporting oil and gas. Basically, like our economic strategy. Do you remember the strategy of reinvesting that we covered? They actually use that investing into reinvesting the system of their production, which we'll go cover next time. Now, let's talk about billionaires. Of course, one of the most interesting topics. You'll find a quite few billionaires in Moscow, the capital. But Russia itself also has many poor people, you know? However, you may know there is a concept about like the vk.com, which is famous for Vkontakte. And the leader of that is very strange and very funny name, which is Pavel Durov. This guy is nowadays one of the richest billionaires of Russia. Now let's start our journey through the history of Russia. It will be very simple and very short part of it. So the Russian Empire basically began around 1380. I hope you know the difference between AD and BC. At the state of Muscovy, about the size of Wales, and it was centered on Moscow and ruled by princes. Just it was a small area, just imagine, it was the size of Wales. The princess itself, she was very ambitious and took over more and more land. Moscow grew larger and more powerful. The most ambitious prince of all was Ivan the Terrible. He made himself a Tsar. You basically know what a Tsar is. It's the Emperor of Russia. By the time he died in 1584, Moscow was 270 times bigger than it was in 1300. Do you remember that date? It was when actually the Russia was as if the size of Wales. Now, later, Tsars continued to expand the empire. They were going actually and reaching out for more and more lands, and peoples of faraway lands and different ethnic groups were taken over. And of course, it usually involved fighting. So people had to fight for it. The Tsars and nobility grew more and more wealthy. Most other were poor peasants. Many were serfs, owned by noblemen. You understand what's that? Those guys, do you remember the ethnics of related to the feudalism? Basically, the concept of it was somehow similar. Now, if we go next, we're gonna see Nicholas II was a Tsar when World War I began. He brought Russia into the war on the side of the Allies, which were UK, France and others. The Allies won, but the Russian army suffered huge losses. And meanwhile, back home, people were short of food and fuel. They blamed the Tsar. Just imagine, that Tsar made people to fight even though he knew that the loss will be the great one. And basically people, only that's why they We're blaming that side. So let's go next. In 1970, even before the war had ended, there was a great revolution in Russia. Nicholas II was deposed. No more emperors ever. That revolution was soon followed by another one in 1990. The Bolsheviks coming out, and they lead by Lenin, and they took over. The Bolsheviks were communists. Lenin reorganized the Russian Empire to form the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The republics were created along ethnic lines. However, Lenin died in 1924, which opened the road for Stalin for his takeover. He aimed to make the USSR a great industrial power. Well, he achieved this very quickly, and often by brutal means. Usage of power was basically his favorite one. Then came the World War II. The USSR joined the Allies, UK, France, USA, and others. In 1941, played a big part in helping defeating Germany. And during the war, Stalin seized the chance to extend the USSR and its influence further into Europe. This made other countries very hostile. However, Stalin died in 1953. Other leaders followed. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took over. He wanted people to have more freedom. That led to unexpected results. In 1991, the republics which formed the USSR voted to leave it. The USSR broke up. Russia was alone. Today, as we see, Russia is actually, complete name is Russian Federation. Now, the question for you guys, why do you think that it's not just Russia, or how we say UK, Baku, or England, or let's say Africa, but why it's exactly Russian Federation? Please comment below so we can see the ideas. Now, in reality, it's divided into federal districts to make it easier to govern. These are in turn divided into lots of smaller units. Look at this map. Russia is still governed from Moscow, but the Communist Party is no longer in power. Now people can choose who will govern them by simple voting. Now, as you already understood the little episode of History of Russia, let's actually brainstorm about the question why Stalin was very popular in the UK for a time. Please suggest a reason and again in the comments below. Okay, now let's move on to Russian main physical features. Map here shows the exactly physical features that we need from Russia. As we see, there are a lot of mountains. The Ural Mountains form a natural border between Asia and Europe. Asian Russia, to the east of them, is usually called Siberia. Now look for the Caucasus Mountains. The highest peak is Mount Elbrus. It is actually 5,642 meters. It's Europe's highest mountain. As you can see, the Asian part of Russia has more highland overall. And let's talk about plains and plateaus. Russian plains and plateaus cover vast areas. The East European plain is where most of Russia's population live. It has best farmland and less harsh climate overall. The West Siberian plain is low and flat. It has lots of boggy land and coniferous forests, and of course frozen tundra north of the Arctic Circle. Under this plain lies the world's largest basin of oil and gas reserves. The Central Siberian Plateau is an unplanted area. Flat in places, most of it is covered in coniferous forest. It's rich in resources: coal, oil, gas, nickel, iron, diamonds, and more. Let's talk about their lakes and seas. We have an example of a Lake Baikal. It's the world's oldest and deepest lake, but not the largest in the area. It holds about 1/5 of Earth's liquid fresh water. By the way, there was a question related to this. Tell me, the 90% of world water, let's say, is fresh, salty, dirty, or tasty. Who knows? The answer should be in the comments. Thank you. Okay, now let's talk about our favorite Caspian Sea. It's called the sea and it's built salty, but it's really a huge lake, the world's largest in area. It lies below sea level. Over 130 rivers flow into it. The Volga is the biggest one, but none flow out. It does not overflow because it loses water by evaporation. Do you remember the water cycle? This is basically part of it. Next, we have the Baltic Sea. It's bordered by Kaliningrad, the Russian exclave. It joins the North Sea. The Black Sea flows into the Mediterranean Sea. The climate around the Black Sea is mild, with warm sunny summers. So this is where you'll find Russia's seaside resorts. Now about rivers. Volga is the longest river in Europe. It has a special place in Russian history and culture. Right, guys. So this episode is already coming to the finish line. I would like to thank you all for your attention and those who were making notes and also were active in the comment line. You guys are the best. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your likes and dislikes also. Well, it was the end of the first part. However, get ready for the next part, which also will be soon. That was Easter Paradise.